Hey everyone, this is Matt. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about Eldlich deck building and why I don't run certain cards, or why I don't think certain cards are good in Eldlich. So I've gotten a lot of comments over the course of my videos. Um, just people ask me, why don't you play this card? What do you think about this card? What about that card? Right? Like it's just there's a lot of cards that I can comment on. Um, Actually, I'm going to add one more to the list that I just remembered just now. All right, so I'm gonna go through a list. It's not exhaustive. I'm sure there's more that people are curious about of cards that why do you not run this card in your Eldritch deck? I will answer this for you now. All right, so let's start with Cursed Eldland. All right, this card is the bane of my existence. I hate this card with a fiery passion. Um, I see a lot of people play it. I'm not really sure why they play it. It's not good in the way that you're building this deck, right? Um, like if you were to be building an Eldritch deck that's like a hybrid deck, like maybe um, Cyberse Eldritch or Branded Eldritch, then I can sort of see an argument for having Cursed Eldland. But if you're building pure Trap Eldritch like me, this card does not have a place. So let's talk about why this card. Okay, so I mean this card has its uses, and in fact, in my current TCG deck profile, I am main decking 2 copies of this card. I don't want to be, but I feel like I have to. All right, so why do I feel like I have to? So let's talk about some of the pros of this card. So game one, if you're blind and you're not, and you lose a die roll and you're going second, sometimes you have to deal with some annoying back row monsters or cards, annoying back row cards such as Sword Soul Blackout, such as Branded in Red, Branded Banishments, right? A lot of like these annoying cards that you just kind of want to get rid of, like right off the bat, right? So Curse Eldland kind of helps you do that. How does it do that? Well, assuming this card will search you Eldritch into your hand. Like most of the time, that's what I'll be doing, right? If you already open Eldritch in your opening hand, then this card will search you one of the Golden Land traps. So usually Huaquero, right? Um, so typically, how you want to open it is like you're going second, you play Curse Eldland. If they respond or pop it, like you just get to mill Eldritch one of your Eldritches to the graveyard, and it's fine. Like it's you know. But if not, you pay 800 life points. You search either Eldritch, or if you already have Eldritch in hand, you search one of the Golden Land traps like Huaquero, and then you send Eldritch to the graveyard with a Golden Land trap or an Elixir, right? Snipe, remove one of their annoying cards. Maybe you remove their Changing. Maybe you remove their Sword Soul Blackout. Maybe you remove their Branded in Red, right? You just remove something that you don't want to deal with, right? Um, so yeah, in that regard, Cursed Eldland is good because then after you do that, you immediately use the Eldritch you just sent to the graveyard to send Cursed Eldland to the graveyard, revive itself, and then on the new chain, Cursed Eldland will mill a card. Usually, you want to mill an Eldritch, right? Um, yeah, milling a Golden Land trap usually doesn't make sense because again, ideally you sent the Eldritch with one of your Golden Land traps or elixirs already, but if not, then you would mill a Golden Land trap, right? And then you just go from there. You can bring out a 3,500 attack monster and maybe like beat over one of their boss monsters. So yeah, so Curse Eldland has its uses, but the reason I hate this card is as follows. One, going first, this card is dog shit. Like that situation I described is only really valid going second. Going first, you can't really do that, right? So going first, this card is kind of bricky. Um, so yeah, it's like you open 5 card opening hand. This Curse Eldland that you drew could be a trap instead, a trap that actually does something on your opponent, like on your opponent's turn. But instead, you have this card, right? It's like okay, so basically you open a 4 card hand. Feels bad, right? Um, I mean, oh, you could argue, oh, but you activate it and then you search. You can pay 100 life points to search a Golden Land trap or an Eldritch. Okay, but the problem with that is like searching a Golden Land trap is useless unless you already have an Elixir. You cannot search an Elixir, and searching an Eldritch going first, it's like, well, you're not really gonna be like sending it to the graveyard to remove a card. So what's the point other than thinning your deck, right? In any case, you're basically setting 4 max, right? So I don't know. It just feels really bad. one thing I'll say is like like if we're going so yeah, if you're siding and you know you're gonna go second, normally like when side decking, if you know you're going first, you take this out. If you know you're going second, you might want to keep this in, might, right? Because usually you're going first. Second options in your side deck are typically better than this card. But if you need to get rid of a pesky card of theirs that you can't out with your other traps, then I guess you can use this, right? Um, and then like it's also a spell, and if they side anti-spell fragrance against you, then this just kind of does nothing, right? So I don't know. It just feels really bad. I will say one time I played against a Punk Synchro deck that their end board contained Psychic and Punisher, right? And if for those of you who don't know, Psychic and Punisher has an effect that says like, oh, it's unaffected by card effects as long as their life points are lower. And typically they arrive at Psychic and Punisher by paying life points. The Punk engine pays like 600 life points. Cursed Eldland pays 800 life points. So as soon as you activate Cursed Eldland, their Psychic and Punisher is no longer immune to card effects, and then you can just out it immediately if you like. So I'd say that's like one little bonus, like pro of this card. But the cons is just like so much, right? It's like, okay, so let's say you have Cursed Eldland on your field. It's a continuous spell, which is taking up a slot that a trap card could be in, right? And we play Trap Trick. Trap Trick requires, in order for you to even activate Trap Trick, you must have an open spot in your spell trap zone to begin with, right? So yeah, I hate this card. The only reason I'm playing is because I feel like I have to, because some cards like Branded in Red, Branded Banishment, uh, Sword Soul Blackout is really annoying. Now, some of those cards like Blackout and Branded Red can be dealt with if you have Lord of the Heavenly Prison. But if you don't have Lord of the Heavenly Prison, Curse Eldland helps you just like snipe that card, right? So so yeah, that's the main thing. I suppose it's like if you want to just like take out a problematic card of theirs before you set your cards and pass, like this helps, right? But going first, it's absolute dog shit, and there's a lot of drawbacks where like, hey, I'm trying to set a full back row here, including a trap like trap trick, which may require an open slot, right? I don't want this card to be unnecessarily taking up a spot on my back row, right? And in fact, and that's happened before, where it's like, oh, it's like so I have to I like the only way to get rid of it is your Eldlich graveyard effect. You can't get rid of it otherwise. And I have to say that like I have lost a game 3 once against a Sword Soul player because this card made me pay 800 life points and I lost on time and I had lower life points. So yeah, I really dislike this card. Um, I would recommend don't play it. I'm playing it currently, but I do plan on cutting it very soon because I feel like it hasn't been paying that much dividends lately. And it's like again, when you think about these cards that I'm going over, everything is about opportunity cost, right? If I have this, I'm sticking to a 40 card deck, right? It's a tight deck. I don't want more than 40, right? If I put this card in my deck, what am I cutting? What am I removing from my deck in order to put this card in? Always ask yourself this about any card you put, right? Because typically there is a better card. It's like this Curse Outland could be another Floodgate or like another trap that like messes up your opponent, right? It could be so many things that just do a better job of what you would like to do, right? So, all right, that's Curse Eldland. Please stop playing it. I hate this card. It was a little better when DPE was around because DPE, if they try to pop this card, you just get to mill a card for free. You bait the DPE pop, and also if they don't do that, Curse Eldland will draw you Eldlich, and Eldlich will send to the graveyard, attempt to send DP to the graveyard. Because remember, like DP, so a graveyard effect only occurs if it was destroyed, not if it was sent to the graveyard. So yeah, back in the DP meta, I would even argue this was slightly better. But even now, it's like it's even less so. So yeah. So the reason I haven't put out a deck profile yet for TCG is because I'm not satisfied with my deck. Like I still feel like it can be improved upon. But I definitely feel like Cursed Eldland is not the way to do it, and I'm gonna cut that back out. All right, Elixir of Black Awakening. This card sucks. It's just another Eldritch engine piece. So here's the thing, guys. The Eldritch engine in your deck is the weakest part of your deck, right? You want the engine to be tight. Like you don't want too many cards because you don't want to see most of them because they search each other, and uh, you know you also want them to be like useful. So the problem with Elixir of Black Awakening is You can only use it on your turn, right? The Eldlich must come out in defense position, so you can't even attack with it. And you can't even use this to search a Golden Land card until the following turn. So literally you have to wait 2 turns. Whereas all the Eldlich, like the traps that I run, you can use them, and then the following turn immediately use it to search, right? So this card is too slow. It's too shitty. It's just bad. It's just a bad card. It's strictly worse than Elixir. And it's like, okay, it's like there's so many better cards than this that I can be having in my deck instead of this. It's like another another needle sealing. Like there's just better cards that are just more useful, right? So the Eldlich engine, right now with 2 Lords, 2 Hawk, 3 Elixir, 3 Conquistador. That's 10 cards of 40. So yeah, you expect to see at least 1 piece in your opening hand, especially if you have pot cards. It's really hard that you don't see, but you do not want to see more than one, right? Because like I said, the engine is searchable. You don't want to like have to have multiple of these engine pieces because they don't work like they're not good standalone, right? Elixir doesn't really interrupt my opponent other than preventing them from maybe swinging into me. Like Conquistador doesn't pop a card unless I have an Eldlich. So the reason the Eldlich engine is the weakest part of the deck is because they depend on each other in order to do stuff, right? So if you have one card but not the other, it's kind of bricky. And yeah, they search each other, but it searches slowly, right? So the main reason we have the Eldritch engine is because we need a monster to attack their life points. That's the main reason. Um, Elixir White Destiny, I just feel like this is worse in some ways and better in others. So this only summons Eldritch from hand or graveyard, whereas Black Awakening is from the deck. So I guess they can't Ash this, but they can Ghost Ogre, Ghost Bell it. So, and I guess the quick play nature is kind of nice because you can summon an Eldritch from your graveyard or hand, like on your opponent's turn. So it's similar to Elixir of Scarlet Sanguine in that regard, but I just feel like it's bad. Like the best reason for this card is like you try to summon your Eldritch from the graveyard with this graveyard effect. They chain Call by the Grave. You chain this card, right? But that's pretty much the only good use case I see out of it. It's just bad otherwise. And just like Elixir Black Awake, you have to wait a turn before you can search with it, unless or like an extra turn. Unless you activate it on your opponent's turn, then you can do it on your turn right away. But still, it's just bad. Golden Land Forever. This card sucks. I hate that people play it. The reason this card sucks is, again, like the other argument I said, this card is only live if you have another card, right? So this only works if you have Eldritch on the field. And it only works optimally if you have Eldritch and one of your Golden Land, like another zombie, right? So if you have Eldritch by itself, you have to tribute your Eldritch. If you tribute your Eldritch, you're leaving your field open to an attack, perhaps, and they might be able to OTK you, maybe, right? But what happens if you can't even get Eldritch on the field, right? Let's say you use Elixir, you try to summon Eldritch, they ash you. Okay, now this card is dead. It does nothing, right? Why would I want to play a card where sometimes it does nothing and other times it does something worse than other cards, right? Like, I don't know, like, I'd rather run a Solemn card. I'd rather run Solemn Judgment. I'd rather run Solemn Strike. Like, there's just better cards that I could be running than this card. Oh, but it's searchable. Yeah, but it doesn't search you any more cards, and you're basically trading like 1 for 1, right? Um, like, this card can't really save you from access code because you can't even chain this card to access code. Solemn Strike can stop access code on summon, like the summon of access code. I don't know. It just feels really weak. Um, to run, right? Um, and it's all about opportunity cost. There are better cards. So, like, I see some branded Eldritch players run this, and that's because, like, they turbo Eldritch onto the field. Um, and, like, that's fine. I just feel that like, the reason that branded Eldritch probably works better with this card is because if they tribute their Eldritch, they usually have another body, usually, like, Mirror Jade. So, it's not like Eldritch is their only monster protecting them from being attacked, right? Whereas, and even Cyberse Eldritch, they have other monsters on the field. So, yeah. This card, not good in a pure Eldritch deck. Pot of Prosperity. So I run Pot of Extravagance and Pot of Duality. Why do I not run Prosperity? Because, well, I mean, there's a few reasons, but one being, Extravagance generates you more card advantage, right? So, Extravagance, you draw 2. Prosperity will get you one card. Granted, you get to pick the card out of 6, but like the whole point of an Eldlich trap deck is you just generate card advantage and trade your traps for more cards than you spent. So Prosperity, you spend this card to receive one card. Pot of Extravagance, you spend one card to receive 2 cards. So in that case, you net a card, and you know, and you can set more cards, right? Like, oh, you can only set 5. Yes, but you also have monsters. Maybe you have an Eldlich. Maybe you have Lord of the Heavenly Prison, right? Like there's, or you have follow up. Like it's Extravagance is just strictly better than Prosperity, in my opinion, for Eldlich, right? I mean, if you're playing like Floodgates, yeah, go for Prosperity, but because like combo decks require that one single card to pop off, whereas like control decks, we just outgrind you, right? We outgrind you by having more cards, like, and just massive card advantage. So yeah, not a fan of Prosperity. And also Prosperity conflicts with Extravagance. So if I run Prosperity, I probably shouldn't run Extravagance, otherwise it becomes bricky. So just rather not. Zombie World. So I added the Zombie World card, but honestly, um, this card here is a stand-in for the entire Zombie World deck. Oh, why do I not run Doom King? Why do I not run Zombie World and this and that, right? So the reason I don't play Zombie World Eldlich is because I'm opening myself to more uh, like outs from my opponent, right? So if I run Zombie World with like Doom King Baldrach, all of a sudden Goes in Match hurts me a lot more than before. All of a sudden Skill Drain hurts me a lot more than before. All of a sudden like Shadow Imprisoning Mirror hurts me a lot more than before. Like, see, the thing about my Floodgates, like, I can ignore most of my Floodgates. Goes in Match, I can easily play through with Eldlich. Same with Skill Drain, right? But as soon as you start having Floodgates that also hurt you, right? It's like, it just seems unnecessary. Um, the only time I would consider running Zombie World is if Tikaboo was meta. Like, if we were in a format where we're in a Tier 1 format or Tier 0 format and, like, Tikaboo just hard wins the matchup, then I'm like, oh, I'll also throw in a Zombie World because if I make everyone zombies and flip Tikaboo, then everyone has one monster, right? Uh, but even that, it's like, okay, that's like 2 Floodgates. I mean, yeah, Zombie World is good against Floundries, but that's only going first. Going second, it doesn't do much. I guess going second, you activate it, and then they can't really use Dreaming Town, or like Dreaming Town does nothing. But yeah, so I mean, you can go ahead and play Doom King Baldarok, but if you do, you can't really get away with playing Gozen Match or Skill Drain, right? Unless you just turn off your Doom King, or just there's just too much. There's more anti-synergy than synergy. Let's just put it that way, right? And remember, everything is about um, trade-offs, right? So what's the Doom King package? Let's say 1 or 2 Doom Kings, 3 Zombie Worlds, maybe the Necro Banshee, maybe an Una Zombie, right? Like those are a lot of cards. That's like 10 cards. So let's say it's 10 cards, right? That means I have to take 10 cards from my 40 card deck and replace them with the Zombie World package, right? Just so that I can put in like one Omni Negate, right? Which like Zoom King is sorry, it's not even Omni Negate. It's a Monster Negate and a Monster Banish, like off of Doom King. Which, by the way, if they have Imperm or Droplet or whatever, like they can just ignore it, right? Like I want to make it so my opponent can't do anything to me, right? That's my goal. If they can Imperm my Doom King, that's already a successful play on their part. If they can Droplet my Doom King, that's a successful play on their part. I want my deck so that they cannot do anything to me, right? Do you want to Imperm my Eldlich? Go ahead, does nothing. You want to drop on my Eldlich? Go ahead, does nothing, right? Like, so that's the whole point of playing Trap Eldlich. You want to play cards that your opponent will not be able to respond or do anything about, right? That's the main goal. I mean, maybe they can side in some back row clear, but still, like, almost every deck, like top deck, combo deck, whatever, will come out with, the usual suspects. Valor, Imperm, blah, 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 right? Maybe Droplet. And those are cards that can hit the Doom King Zombie World packets. So yeah, Doom King is a cool card. I like Doom King. It's a cool looking card, right? But if I want to play Doom King, I'll make a dedicated Zombie World deck. I'm not going to make some hybrid, bastardized, like, Zombie World Eldlich deck, right? Because there's not that much synergy, honestly. There really isn't. Okay, Eldlich is a zombie, so? It's a light zombie, like so what, right? I just don't feel that there's really that synergy. Um, yeah, just go play Zombie World deck. Zombie World deck is fun, right? You don't need Eldlich and all these other traps in order for you to play a Zombie World deck. Just play a normal Zombie World deck. Fateful Adventure. So this is a stand-in for um, basically like the Adventure Engine. Why don't I play the Adventure Engine in Eldlich? Again, you're committing 10 cards to a strategy that puts up one Omni Negate on your field, right? Which is arguably not even as good as like let's say a Solemn Strike or whatever, right? Like, and guess what? If your Adventure Engine is on the board, Goes in Match hurts you, right? Uh, Skill Drain hurts you, right? Fateful Adventure and Draco Back are cards that take up back row slots, right? They take up two. That means you're setting three cards, right? I don't know. It just feels weak. Cards Griffin Rider can lose to Imperm, can lose to Ghost Ogre. There's so many counters for Griffin Rider and the Adventure Engine. Why would I play a card that plays into what my opponent has, right? Like a counter that my opponent has. I want to play a deck that my opponent can't do anything about, right? That's why you're playing Eldlich. If you want to play a deck where your opponent can out your things, go play other combo decks, right? You should not be playing Eldlich. Just go play, Adventure, whatever, Virtual World or whatever Adventure Punk, right? Just like there's no point in playing Adventure in Eldlich. But also, if they you also make yourself susceptible to anti-spell fragrance, right? Anti-spell fragrance shuts down the Adventure Engine. Like you literally can't do anything with it, right? Like a lot of people are citing anti-spell fragrance. Why would you want to play into anti-spell fragrance? If you run as few spells as possible, anti-spell fragrance will do nothing to you, right? So that's why I don't like it. Summon Limit. I love this card. It's great for going first, and that's pretty much it. Going second, this card is way bad. Going first is great, but I don't feel like it's like my side deck. I can fit this in my side deck, right? So I would only side this card. I would not main it. Otherwise, like game one, it's kind of a brick if you lose a die roll. Um, yeah, just looking at my side deck, I just wouldn't cut anything to put in Summon Limit, especially since like more than half my side deck, yeah, most of my side deck is cards for going second. So, and I don't know, this just seems unnecessary. Tikaboo. I see Eldlich players play this. I never understand why. Like, okay, sure, it stops decks like Sword Soul. It stops decks like Fluanderies. Okay, that's cool, I guess. But then it does nothing to a lot of other decks. Like Skytrackers can ignore this. Prank Kids isn't around anymore, can ignore this. Like, there's a lot of decks that can just straight up ignore this. Whereas Goes in Match hits more decks. Like Branded can ignore Tikaboo, right? So if you make a list of like high priority floodgates, like what's the best floodgate in the format, right? You have Skill Drain, probably at the top, followed by Goes in Match, followed by Rivalry of Warlords, right? Like, so there followed by D Barrier, right? Like there are floodgates that are just better than this, right? Especially in the current format. Like maybe if we, I don't know, get into a tier 0 format where all the monsters are the same type, yeah, maybe Tikaboo might be worth playing. But the problem is like this shuts off your Eldlich engine. So basically like, and I've had this happen before. I've tried running Tikaboo before. Like, oh, your opponent you can't summon more than one Eldlich. You can't summon your zombies. The only other card you can summon is Lord of the Heavenly Prison. So if you just have an Eldlich on the field, that's all you're gonna have on the field. And then your opponent just sets monster in defense mode. You attack it, pass. They set a monster in defense mode. You attack it, pass. They set a monster in defense mode. You attack it. Like they can just stall it out. And I have lost games on time to people just stalling out like that. Right back when I was experimenting with Tikaboo, it's just not really worth it. Like I don't know. It's not a. It doesn't feel like a good card. Because again, opportunity cost. What am I taking out to put this card in? Am I taking out Torrential Tribute? I'd rather have Torrential Tribute, right? Am I taking out like what? Solemn Strike? No, I'm keeping Solemn Strike over this card. Like, there's just better cards, right? Like, yeah, let's say Goes in Match was banned, right? Maybe Rivalry was limited to one, right? Then yeah, I would consider running 3 of these, right? Like, so let's take the current festival that's coming up on Master Duel, right? They limited Skill Drain to 1. They limited Goes in Match to 1. They limited Rivalry to 1. Guess what? In that deck, I'm running 3 Tikaboo because they did not limit that to 1, right? It's like this is like a floodgate. Yeah, you run when you don't have better ones. But currently there are better ones. Rivalry is better, Goes in is better, Skill Drain is better, D-Barrier is better. So, yeah, Just run those instead of this, and then you'll be better off. So that's my argument against Tikaboo. And if you recall, uh, Tikaboo back in the what is it, YCS Hartford, whatever YCS where Prank Kids won, right? The final game was Prank Kids versus Eldlich, right? Eldlich player had Tikaboo. Prank Kids player literally ignored it. But imagine if that Eldlich player had Rivalry of Warlords instead. They would have won that game, probably. Like, who knows, right? I'm just saying, like, typically, most times, most formats, there are better floodgates than this. Like, maybe Rivalry is better. Maybe Goes is better. Maybe it's like, there's just better skill drain, skill drain, right? D-barrier. So, yeah, that's why I don't run Tikaboo. You can if you want, but I'm just saying, you'll probably be better off running Rivalry or Gozen. Like, and if you're already running all, what is that? 12 of those floodgates I already mentioned. You're already running three skill. You're already running three D-Barrier. You're already running three Gozen. You're already running three Rivalry, right? You're already running the Eldlich package, which is 10 cards, right? You're already running three Solemn Strike. Like, you get to a point where like, okay, am I actually gonna fit this card? And is it better than another card I could have instead, right? So just keep that in mind. Especially, and another thing about Tikaboo, when you're going second, Tikaboo is a lot worse. Well, oh, by the way, Tikaboo does not hit the adventure package, right? Because the token is a fairy, the griffin is a wing beast, and then they just bring out Draco back, and then they bounce your thing, right? So Tikaboo does not already stop a lot of like punk synchro type decks can play around it, right? There are ways for it to play around it. Sky Shark can play around it, right? Like, yeah, Tikaboo is not great. And if you're going second, Tikaboo gets even worse against especially those decks where they set up a board with a bunch of monsters. Baron de Fleur is a warrior, right? Psychic End Punisher is a psychic. Borload Savage Dragon is a dragon. Griffin Rider is a wing beast. The Adventure Token is a fairy, right? Like, maybe they have a worm. So typically end boards for a lot of those like pile decks or like just good decks, they typically don't have more than one type of boss monster, right? Like their engine pieces might be more similar types, like punks are all like psychics or whatever. But once they get to the final boss monsters, it's like they don't actually have more than one typically. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think Tikaboo is worth playing because of that. And that brings me to my next card, Anti-Spell Fragrance. Oh, Anti-Spell Fragrance busted. People are rallying, calling for this card to be banned, pitchforks and stuff after what happened at Nationals. Yeah, Anti-Spell Fragrance is a strong card, but the problem is it is better. This card is best in combo decks or decks that can OTK, right? So the whole point of Anti-Spell Fragrance is I'm going to stop you from playing your spells for one turn, and then I'm going to kill you before your next turn, right? But the problem with Eldlich is we do not have great OTK potential. So basically, Anti-Spell is like, I'm going to stop you from playing your spells for one turn, and then I'm going to play some other traps that will stop you from doing other things on your following turn. Like, I don't know, it just seems pointless, right? Like, so yeah, I don't bother running this because, like, again, we don't have good OTK potential, right? Our OTK, like Eldritch OTK, basically comes down to a rank 10 play. And you can only rank 10 if you don't have Skill Drain or Gozen on the field. Then the rank 10 play, if those are up, then the rank 10 play can't even happen. If you use Pot of Extravagance, maybe you banish your rank 10. So, yeah, it's Anti-Spell Fragrance is a good card in combo decks, in decks that have the ability to OTK, to actually use that one turn window of opportunity to kill you before you can actually do anything. Whereas Eldritch doesn't have that, so I don't think this card is very good in Eldritch. So anyway, and if it was, it would only be a side deck option. By the way, it would be a okay. Uh, I lost the last game. I'm gonna side this in for going first because going second, this card does nothing, right? Um, but then it says, okay, so what am I cutting out of my side deck to put this card in? Solemn Judgments, right? Am I taking out my Lava Golems? Hell no, right? There's just so much, like, my side deck is already stacked with good cards. I don't feel like this card has a spot for it. Again, opportunity cost, right? We're limited to how many cards we can fit, and I just don't think this card makes sense. Infinite Impermanence. Alright, so people ask, why don't you run Imperm as a trap? Isn't it? Yes, but the problem with Imperm is it's very, very, very low impact, right? So the reason that combo decks run Imperm, similar reason, and why it's good in combo decks, similar reason to Anti-Spell Fragrance. They stop their opponent's play for one turn, and then they OTK them next turn when they can't do anything about it, right? So, like, This just stops them from bringing out a whatever boss or line of play they're trying to do. But then if you don't, if you just pass your turn and do nothing, they're just going to continue that line of play next on their next turn, right? So because imperm leaves the monster that you imperm on the field, it doesn't remove the body. So they still have the body. They can still make plays. They can still link the body away, right? So I don't know. Like imperm is just way worse of a trap in like all cases, going first or second. Like every other trap on this list that I have here, which are by the way traps that I don't even recommend playing, are traps that are better than imperm for Eldlich, right? Because remember, Eldlich is like it's a control deck. You want to be able to stop your opponent over a grind game, right? Not for just one turn and then OTK them. No, we don't have great reliable OTK, right? Imperm is great for stopping like one turn, one play, right? And most of the time, like, oh, you imperm them, you're now down to, let's say you're at 5 cards, right? You're now down to 4 cards, and the monster that you imperm is still on the field, right? Eldlich is not a 1 card combo deck or a 2 card combo deck. There is no combo in Eldlich, right? We are a control deck. Imperm has no place in a control deck. It just sucks, right? And guess what? If you flip skill drain, imperm doesn't even work. You literally cannot activate imperm while skill drain is active, right? And skill drain is just a much better version of imperm in every way imaginable. So I don't really see any reason why you would ever run imperm when there's just better cards, right? What are you going to cut to put in imperm? Solemn Strike? Solemn Strike is better than imperm. Are you going to cut Torrential? Torrential is better than imperm. Are you going to cut Needle Sealing? Needle Sealing is better than imperm, right? I would rather let them put out all their monsters that they want. Like, let's say I'm going second, and then on my turn, I just kill them with like Torrentials or Gozen or Needle Sealing. I'd rather just let them put out their all their best monsters and then just kill those monsters, right? Rather than just saying, oh, I'm going to stop you from putting out your best boss monsters for one turn, and then next turn you do it, right? Like, it just seems silly. So please do not run Imperm. It sucks. And also, a lot of decks can just, like, have more counters for Imperm. Like, Philanderies has the Advent of Adventure. They just chain that, get their Burb off the field, right? Or, like, or Book of Moon. Like, there's just quick play options, right? Or, like, what is it? Branded has Branded Red, right? They fuse away the monster you're trying to imperm. Like, their decks already play around imperm. So again, the goal of playing a pure Eldritch trap deck is you don't want to give your opponent a chance to do anything against you, right? Like, like you want them to be not ready for anything that you have coming, right? They expect imperms. They know imperm is a card that they've built their deck and know how to play around and against. So why even give them that shot? Just don't do it. I'm actually going to move a few of these cards up here. So, Lost Wind. A lot of people ask me about Lost Wind. Lost Wind is the same problem as Imperm, except Lost Wind cannot be activated from the hand. So it says target a special summon monster to negate its effects, and its attack is halved, and then you can recycle this back onto your field. So Lost Wind, similar problem as Imperm. You temporarily stop them for one turn, maybe a second turn, right? But again, we don't have reliable OTK. And also, Lost Wind does not remove their monster from the field. Like, I like cards that remove bodies, right? It's like, I want to kill the monster or bounce it back in the deck. I don't want it on the field anymore, right? You want to get rid of monsters on the field. Because if they don't have bodies, they can't do link plays, they can't do synchro plays, they can't do any other plays, right? Okay, so you stop this effect, but now they just summon a tuner or like, and then they make a synchro that now does have an effect. Like, it's just way too low impact. Like, Lost Wind is not good in a control deck. I think someone once asked me about Warning Point. So this card is like a little better than Imperm if you're going first. If you're going second, this card is dog shit. Like, it does nothing, right? If you're going first, it's like slightly better than Imperm, but it's still bad. So yeah, same reason. It's just higher impact. It's like there are other cards I would rather have in my deck. There are cards in this list I would rather have in my deck than over Warning Point. Gravedigger's Trap Hole. This is just a worse Solemn Strike. Like, you want to stop a monster effect, just use Solemn Strike instead. And like, this isn't even a counter trap, so they can theoretically negate this if you're going second, right? They cannot negate Solemn Strike unless they have like Solemn Judgment or something, right? So yeah, Gravedigger Trap Hole is a fine card if it's in like in decks that can search this easily, like Trap Trick or like Madolche or whatever. Any other deck that can search this, yeah, this card is a good card, but like in Eldlich, where like we're not searching this card, we're just drawing it. Like I would rather draw another card. Storming Mirror Force. I love, 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 love this card. It's really great. Problem is, it's a battle phase trap. So if your opponent has set up a bunch of negates in their main phase, then they can stop this card. Whereas, we kind of, often, or if they have like Burrow in the Fleur, they can pop this card before they attack, right? So like, I would say the one deck that this card is amazing against is Branded Despia, right? Because Branded Despia is great. Uh, so the reason this card is amazing against Branded Despia is because it bounces back to their infusion monster, the extra deck. So, for example, their Ice Jade or Mirror Jade has a card effect that says if it leaves the field for whatever reason and goes to the graveyard, they can Raigeki you on their end phase. This bounces them back into the extra deck. They don't get that effect. Or like if they have ad libitum of Despia ad libitum or whatever it's called, they can revive Mirror Jade or one of their branded or whatever monsters from their grave or banished pile. But if you Storming Mirror force them, then it just bounces back to the extra deck and they can't use ad libitum, right? So I love Storm Mirror Force. It's great against like Shadalls, right? It's great against there's a lot of matchups where it's good against. But there's more matchups where it just gets countered before you even have a chance to use it. So yeah, I do love this card. It's a fun card. It's great. I used to run in Dark Magician, but at the current format, I would not run this. Especially since like, you look at the top deck Sword Soul, right? Sword Soul can out this card so many ways before the battle phase. Vishuda bounce. You have a Boxia bounce. Like, they just have ways to just outing this card before they even attack. They have a blackout, right? Like, so yeah, I just don't see the much point. Like Barone can out like, yeah, there's not much point in running this, even though it is a good card. Like if other traps didn't exist, yeah, I'd probably put this in. Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is here, but it's a stand-in for any hand trap. Do not play hand traps in Eldlich. Same reason I argued about Imperm. Hand traps are too low impact. They stop one of your opponent's plays, but unless you're going to OTK them after that, they're just going to make the same play again next turn, right? It's just too low impact. Most of the time, you use Ash, you're trading one for one. Like, oh, you use a card, activate Ash, I use a card. So it's like, I'd rather trade 1 for 5 or 1 for 3, right? Rather than 1 for 1. So, Inspector Border. Inspector Border, I used to play in Eldlich back before. There was a time last year in 2021 where Imperm Veiler was not mandatory in your decks, right? And I rarely saw Imperm or Veiler, especially Imperm. This card was good then, right? Because, you didn't really have to deal with Imperm. But then this card hard loses to Imperm, hard loses to, what's it called? Droplet, hard loses to Chalice. Hard loses to any branded spell, so this card says that you can only activate monster effects up to a number of different monster types. Let's say they just play Branded Fusion, then this card just dies and does nothing, right? Branded Fusion, they just swing over this card and it's done. So there's too many outs for it. It's a fun card. I like it. I would play it in another format, but this is not the format to play this card. And even if I played it in another format, I would side deck it. This is not a main deck because this is only good going first. Going second doesn't matter. Fossil Dyna. Yeah, this card conflicts with Skill Drain. I just feel like it just get negated really easy. And if they try to negate this card, you can't actually Witch's Strike because all this happens in the damage step, right? The like flip face up, activate, the pop, or special summon. They chain a Bro negate. I cannot Witch's Strike because I'm in the damage step, right? So, yeah, it just conflicts with Skill Drain, conflicts with goes to match. It just conflicts too much. It gets hit by Imperm, Droplet, right? Again, I don't want them. I want their Imperms and Droplets to be bricks in their hands. I want half their deck to be useless, right? So I'm not gonna run this card. It's just not worth it. Thunder King Ryo, same argument as like all these 4 monsters basically fall in the same category of, oh, they're cool, but they just get countered too easily, or there are too many ways that your opponent can just ignore them. So yeah, it's not really worth. Anyway, so that's my explanation. Like, Any time you're deck building, ask yourself, you're putting in a card, is there a better card I can be putting in right now? And if the answer is yes, don't put in that card. Put in the better card, right? Always ask yourself. Don't just put in Ash because everyone plays Ash. Actually think, is Ash actually have makes sense in Eldlich? No, it doesn't. Same with Imperm. Same with like, you know, a lot of the other cards. So seriously, ask yourself those questions when you're deck building. And before you comment on whatever video of mine, my Eldritch videos, and be like, oh, why don't you play this card? Why don't you play that card? Watch this video first, but then ask yourself, okay, if I play that card, what cards am I cutting, right? Always ask like, you know how in Yu-Gi-Oh monsters have costs and effects, right? You pay the cost and then you use the effect. Okay, what is the cost you are paying to have the effect of this card available to you, right? Like what cards are you cutting for infinite impermanence, for example? If you don't ask yourself that, just don't even bother asking. Like, because most of the time when you ask me these questions, you can answer it by just asking yourself, what am I cutting? And after you decide what you're cutting, ask yourself, is my deck stronger or worse or weaker than it was before I made this change? Like, it's not hard, right? Like you have four. Like, yeah, if I could, I would run every trap card in the world, but unfortunately, we have card limits, like max 60 card deck. We only draw 5 cards. Like it's not worth it to just put all this random bullshit in the deck when there's just better cards, right? You want to see your good cards. You want your decks to be somewhat consistent. Don't run these cards. Always ask yourself about the trade-off. Is there something better I could be running? Is there an alternative? And most of the time, especially for these cards I have shown here, the answer is yes. And whatever other card you're thinking, oh, instead of Storming Mirror Force, what about Drowning Mirror Force or Quaking? Same thing, right? All the Mirror Force cards. Like, yeah. So always ask yourself that before asking me whether or not a card is good or if it should be played. Another thing you should ask is this card good going first and second, right? Because in my Eldritch deck, most cards are good going first and second. So, like, most of these cards here are only good going first. They're not good going second. So, best case, there's a side deck option. But then you're like, okay, so now it's even higher opportunity cards. All right, what am I cutting? Instead of cutting cards from a 40 card pile, you're cutting it from a 15 card. So what am I cutting from my side deck to put these cards in? And is it a worthwhile trade? Like, would I rather have if I'm going second, would I rather have 3 lava golems or 3 inspector borders? 3 lava golems, right? If I'm going first, maybe you could say I would rather have 3 inspector borders. But maybe I would rather have solemn judgment over inspector border, or I'd rather have shadow and prising mirror. Like, there's just better options, right? And really, if you play with the deck that I've shown you in my deck profiles, and you'll see like you're not gonna miss these cards. You're not gonna miss Imperm. You're not gonna miss Ash. You're not gonna miss freaking anti-spell fragrance. You're really not, because like I've already tried to build a deck where it feels like every card is useful, no matter what. Like it's not dependent on other cards being useful. Like it's not only useful going second or going first or whatever. Like it's just yeah. So just keep that in mind. I don't want to really talk about this anymore, but yeah, I just wanted to let that because I just feel like I get these comments all the time, and I always reply to people, oh, why don't you run this? Why don't you run that? Oh, another card people ask like Dogmatica Punishment or like the Dogmatica package, right? Oh, you run Dogmatica Punishment. Why don't you run like Nadir Servant and the Dogmatica package? Um, I used to run like Ecclesia and like right and Nadir Servant, and Ecclesia is only one card, so it's easy to cut. Probably easy to cut one card, but Ecclesia gets stopped by Ash, gets stopped by Imperm, gets stopped by Valor. It just gets stopped by more things, right? So I did. So I did used to run Dogmatica, but I cut it because I just felt like there were just better cards. Um, Plus, you don't want to draw that many monsters. That's the thing. Like monsters, you want to keep your monsters to a minimum because you want to see trap cards most of the time. You don't really want to see your like monsters. So and like the Deer Servant searches monsters, right? So yeah. Um, all right. Well, hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. But yeah, that's just like a general deck building skill. Just ask yourself, is there a better card I could be running? Uh, you know, for any deck. Maybe your Sword Soul deck, maybe your Branded deck, not just Eldlich deck. But for a control deck, you have to have a different mindset when building a control deck from building a combo deck. They are not the same. They do not function the same way. They function differently. It's a different mindset. It's a different strategy. It's a different way of playing, right? So yeah, so you don't want to just like brainlessly put 3 Ash into an Eldritch deck. That's actually like dumb. Like just that's actually like trolling, right? You're wanting to lose if you put 3 Ash into an Eldlich deck. Anyway, all right. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. See you on the next video. Peace.